Hey guys, continuing Iamblichus' Exhortation to Philosophy, text, chapter 14. In the next paragraph, Iamblichus says, our goal is to escape the physical world. And before he says this, and before he explains what he means by this, he says, we cannot get rid of evil. In the physical world, there will always be some evil. And later on, when we talk about Platos and the Platonic philosophy from other authors, we see how in the way nature is created, why this is the case, and why there is a lot of argument, why evil cannot be eradicated on the lower levels of reality. Essentially, it is the lower levels of reality. It's a necessity. And we go into a lot of detail how this is and why it is, especially when we talk about Platos. At this point, Iamblichus just says we cannot get rid of evil in the physical reality, and it exists in the physical reality. He says in the heavenly world, where the gods are existent, evil does not exist. It has no place there. It is only good there. And also we see the arguments for this and the logical proofs much later on in other texts. For now, this is important to understand. So Iamblichus says, so our goal is to escape the physical world, to flee from it, to run away from this evil. And it is very important that here he makes a clarification. He says, to escape the physical world means to become like God. Because we can see that a lot of people will misinterpret this. And a lot of my clients, essentially, and clients with depression, they constantly think that their escape is death. So they want to kill themselves and thus escape the pain and suffering. But we know from these texts that, and from logical contemplations, if we believe these texts, then it is not an escape. It will simply be a rebirth, and that the escape will happen if they become like God. And there's also an argument in Platonism that even then we cannot fully escape being reborn. But we can clearly see, there's different arguments on this, but we can clearly see already, just by using logic, that by becoming more and more good, to become like God, essentially, we understand, is to become good, to improve ourselves by living more and more virtuous life, by studying the ways of the gods and the system of the gods, to use Iamblichus's language from the previous chapters. And this way, to live philosophically, to study philosophy, to do the practices, spiritual practices, and so forth. And this way we're evolving, essentially, we're becoming more like God. And even then there's an argument that a part of us will still be reborn because of how nature is structured and designed. But logically we can see that even those rebirths, let's say we live this life, a very pure, very good life, we do not cause great suffering to other people and to ourselves. We can already logically see that the next life will be or the next several lives will be more beneficial and less painful. And in spiritual circles we see this, when a spiritual master will look at somebody and say that you've, for example, you've lived many lives, and this is why you can understand the complicated concepts now very easily, for example, and why you are so driven towards studying philosophy, for example. We can see these things like that. And this person's life, because of these drives, these instincts, this person's life will be filled with more good than, let's say, a person who lives purely to satisfy their base desires. So this, we can already see how this is taking place. It doesn't matter whether you believe in reincarnation or not. just purely logically, you can already see that by living a philosophical life, you are already escaping this world and its suffering and its evils. By living a philosophical life, by studying philosophy, by necessity you are becoming more good, because you have to, otherwise you are not living a philosophical life. So you study philosophy, you live the life, you're becoming more good, you're rooting out vices and negative habits in your life. You are automatically becoming more good. Automatically there is less evil in your life. There's less evil that you cause yourself. At least on that level there is less evil. So we can see this is already working in the real physical life already of the person. So why should it stop if when the person's body is dead? If we follow the logic, it shouldn't. If anything, it would propel the person even more, because the body, the physical body, according to this text, is what keeps the person dragged, person's soul drags it in the dirt of generation, so to say. The tomb in which the soul is kept captive. The prisoner, so to say, to use Iamblichus' words from previous chapters. So we see this idea is beautiful, and we see there's huge logical support for it, and it builds up from the previous chapters already. So that's it. That's all I wanted to say on this idea. I really like this idea. I really like it that it says to escape this world we have to become like God, which means we have to become good, not kill ourselves. That will not. I guess there is an argument in one of Plato's texts, which we will be covering much later. Not much later, but after this this series, after this text, we start covering Plato's texts. And it's exactly about that we can anger those who created us, so to say, by killing ourselves in the physical life. And in that text, Plato gives an example of a cattle and a shepherd. Imagine if you're a shepherd and you have cattle, and the cows, one of the cows decides that it had enough. It doesn't want to have this anymore. It's unsatisfied with what it's got. So it runs off and jumps off a cliff and kills itself. How angry would you be when you came home to your farm and you discovered that one cattle just decided to kill itself? Or a bunch of cows decided to do that, got together and killed themselves. You'd be pretty angry. And if you could punish them, teach them a lesson, you would. That's essentially one of the arguments in one of Plato's texts, if I remember correctly, against suicide. And we see that if after we kill the body, the soul continues on living, then the soul can be punished for what we did in this life. And we see from this text that that's exactly what Iamblichus argues, that if you live this life in an impure way, there will be punishment. I think in chapter 13 we talked about that in those videos. So that's it, guys. Let's do a meditation. You can do any meditation you want. You can just relax or repeat a prayer. I'll do the one I normally do. Let's do it together right now. Okay, thank you for watching, guys. YouTube will show a video now. Hopefully you can click on it to continue watching this channel. Thank you.